The atmosphere seemed tense and exciting. The phone, which showed almost 7 o'clock on its display, was red in color. Very soon, something was about to happen that had no way back. Just half an hour later, a young guy, Dylan Alba, who sat peacefully, buckled up, as the rules of the road dictate, and did not expect anything. His face was grim, but he was calm. The guy was dressed in a pilot's uniform. His clothes looked neat and pressed. He seemed to be thinking about something and not paying attention to the road. Dylan Alba. This boy, who seemed to have done nothing wrong, was to die in half an hour. That's what a stranger, someone who didn't know him personally, could think about him. But who knows what hides behind this cute and calm face? Everyone has their own opinion about him. It was pouring like a bucket on the street. The road was already completely paved, and there was a hint of dampness and humidity in the air. It was already evening. The drivers turned on their headlights and everyone went about their business. The taxi gained more and more speed. The light was on in the taxi cabin. The car was yellow, which was standard for taxis. At the top was a sign that said taxi. Raindrops constantly fell on the windows, making the view from the windows blurry. There were many lanterns shining on the street, helping drivers to find their way around. The girl in the car seemed very nervous, and her gaze seemed focused on the road. She was dressed simply. Around her neck was a ring that hung on a string. Dylan Alba is a pilot for Eastern Airline and heir to the Alba Consortium. Holding a bright red phone in her hands, she looked down. As she pondered, she thought that Dylan Alba was just the stranger she had seen so often on the news until today. But now everything has changed. Now everything is not as it was before. After the girl was reincarnated, there was a voice in her head all the time telling her that she had to save Dylan Alba or she would die. This voice did not allow her to concentrate and understand what she needed to do now. But she knew that now a great responsibility rested on her shoulders. She kept looking at her phone. But it could not change anything. She only got more and more worried. But not everyone is subject to people. Through the window there were many bright lanterns that illuminated this long road. The girl looked at the display of her phone again. After that, she realized that she would not do anything at this rate. Asking the driver to drive even faster, because otherwise she won't be able to catch up. She just heard that driving faster can be dangerous. She needed to do now. But she knew that now a great responsibility rested on. Of course, the driver was right, because it was dangerous not only for him, but also for her. The black car driving ahead picked up speed. The farther she went, the more she moved away. The driver closely followed the car. The red light from the headlights reflected on the windshield. But in the next minute, something happened that no one expected. A truck appeared in front of the black car, and the car flew into it at high speed. It sounded like an explosion. During the collision, many parts flew and the car was crumpled. Catch up, she just heard that driving faster. The driver was shocked for a few seconds, because it's not every day you see such an accident. The taxi was also traveling at high speed. But he quickly recovered, because it was impossible to allow them to crash into the black car.
La rodeaban, que no estaban claramente relacionados con su persona.
The driver closely followed. All that was left for him was to slow down. Brake with all your might, because here it was important to stop in a matter of seconds. Otherwise, both of them may lose their lives. Pressing the brake pedal, he waited. I was waiting for what would happen next, whether he had time or not. It seemed like an eternity. Catch up. She just heard that driving faster can be The driver was shocked for a few seconds, because when he braked, the girl was suddenly pushed forward, and she tried to stop it. But her salvation was that there was a chair in front of her, and she just hit her head on it. Screaming from the unexpected, she tried to get up.
Claramente relacionados con su persona.
The driver After a few minutes, smoke started coming from the truck and the car. There was so much smoke that it was difficult to see anything. A taxi that almost got into an accident also stopped not far from them. The rain was still falling. The road was slippery, and partly because of this the brakes did not work well. The girl was able to recover only after a few minutes. But hastily looking out the window, she finally saw what had happened. And she noticed that it was a Dylan car. She didn't have much time to think, because she had a mission that she had to fulfill if she wanted to live on. The driver, she quickly opened the car door and ran out. In the end, she only shouted for the driver to call an ambulance. The driver was confused, but agreed. Perhaps he did not understand how she could be so brave in such a situation, as if it was not her first time. But she lived much longer than he could have imagined them. The rain was still falling. The road was slippery, and partly because of this the brakes did not work. The heroine quickly ran to the door of the car, where a boy could be seen, whose head was leaning against the window. Seeing him, she began to knock on the door of the car with all her might and ask if he was all right. But it seemed that he had lost consciousness, so he did not hear her. The driver, she quickly opened the car. She understood that it would not be like that, because if he lost consciousness, she would have to act even faster. After thinking for a few seconds, the heroine decided that the best way would be to break the window. After a little searching, she found a large stone. It did not work well. He was a little heavy for her. But the girl didn't have time to think about it, so she tried and lifted him to her full height to hit the window with all her might. But she needed to take into account the fact that she should not hurt the boy.
Cómoda.
He did not hear her. The driver, she quickly opened the car door. She managed to break the window with one movement. Small and large scattered around. When she saw that everything had worked, she began to shout and ask if he could hear her, and that he could not die. At that moment, she was full of hope and determination. Only the girl could help him. It did not work, but he did not hear her. In such a critical situation, she inspected the car and saw that gasoline was leaking from it. After a little understanding of machines, the heroine concluded that it was about to explode, and it was bad for her. Had she been reborn only to die again? Wendy opened the car door and called out to the boy again. But it was all in vain. Then she decided that it was necessary to take the boy from the car to begin with. She tried to unbuckle the seat belt, holding it so it wouldn't fall.
Admiraba la belleza del adorno.
But it was not possible to unfasten it so easily, because the car stalled and all the controls were damaged. Therefore, Wendy leaned against the seat and with all her might pulled the belt on herself to unfasten it by force.
Extremadamente linda que la chica real promedio.
Wendy after a lot of effort, everything worked out. In the next moment, the guy seemed to fall on top of the girl from the car. The driver could not be saved, but she had to save the boy. Dylan's eyes were closed. He looked very attractive. But it was not possible to unfasten it so easily, because the car stalled and all the controls were damaged. Therefore, Wendy leaned against the seat and with all her might pulled the belt on herself to unfasten it by force.
Chica real promedio.
The girl caught him, but calmly exhaled for a moment. She was happy deep down. She was finally able to get him out of the car, which is great. Wendy gave him a sympathetic look. Who knows if it was done on purpose?
So I'm crazy.
And then the boy was finally able to come to his senses. He opened his eyes weakly and slowly. Raindrops fell from his hair and face. He tried to say something, but it didn't come out. After a few seconds, he tried again, and finally he was heard asking who she was. The girl caught him, but calmly exhaled for a moment. Wendy supported Dylan's body so he wouldn't fall. She was happy that she managed to save him. The girl thought to herself that it was very good that he came to his senses. While standing on her knees, her t-shirt was already soaked through. The heroine hugged the hero to protect him from the rain, and in a calm voice introduced herself, saying her name. Although the boy opened his eyes, he could not fully recover. He didn't have the strength for it after that. But remembering that the car might explode now, she got up and picked Dylan up, and began to slowly carry him away from the car. Time was short, and everything had to be done quickly. More and more smoke was coming from the car. Sparks began to form. This boy, who seemed... And as soon as they had gone a little way, the car exploded. It sounded so loud that it could be heard even at a great distance. But Wendy managed to cover him with her body. He suffered anyway. If he had also suffered from the explosion, he would not have had a chance to live.
El mismo anillo que la niña encontró recientemente en el baño y por el cual comenzó toda esta historia.
Dylan was brought to the hospital as quickly as they could. In order to save his life, doctors and nurses immediately attended to him. Good thing some of them were free. He was given the necessary help and put on a drip. Now nothing threatened his life. There were only 3 people and the doctor, reviewing everything about the patient, waited a little longer than immediately delivering his verdict. The girl was confused and anxiously waiting for this answer. After a few minutes, he replied that the boy's condition is stable, but tests show that after he wakes up, he will have partial amnesia. Hearing this, Wendy asked if everything was true.
La niña, el héroe también agregó que el dueño del anillo ya no estaba aquí, por lo que no tenía sentido preocuparse en vano.
After explaining everything, the doctor left. The girl was sitting on a chair next to the boy. He had a bandage on his forehead and neck. He suffered a lot. If it wasn't for her, he might not have survived. Wendy looked at him and thought about everything that happened and what the doctor told her.
Este hombre se permite esto. Inaudito. La heroína intenta quitarse apresuradamente el anillo y devolvérselo al hombre.
While he slept peacefully, the girl admired his face. She slowly examined his eyes, eyebrows, nose, lips, hair. He looked very beautiful, as if a god had descended into a human body. Wendy mused, as an heir, the boy is too handsome. Although she liked it. Looking at such a handsome man, she couldn't help but smile. He looked innocent, and when he was unconscious, he didn't have the cold face he usually had. The girl could not hold back, but extended her finger to his cheek. After all, his cheeks looked very cute.
Mientras la niña intenta seguirle el ritmo, pero aún se queda un poco atrás, como escondiéndose y deseando que nadie se dé cuenta de su vergüenza.
As soon as she wanted to touch them, he faintly asked for water in a very low voice. Of course she could not refuse him. She asked him to wait while she poured him some.
Ni gente, ni camareros, ni empleados. El restaurante, hay que decirlo, era lujoso, bonitos muebles de madera noble, elegante diseño minimalista. Nuestro jefe debe saber juzgar bien el estilo, tiene cierto gusto.
The girl stood up and began to pour already purified water into a glass. She thought that of course she had to do it, because her life depended on it. Her life depends on him and his life. It was not dark in the ward, some lamps illuminated the room. But when she prepared everything and started to go to him, she suddenly caught hold of the leg of a chair and fell on it. After falling, all of it from the glass poured out on his face, and the girl herself fell on him. Wendy hissed in pain and surprise.
Mucho y la lastimaban de esa manera. Nuestro jefe debe saber juzgar bien el estilo.
The water refreshed the boy and made him open his eyes. Dylan slowly opened them, revealing his beautiful crystal blue eyes. He did not understand what was happening, so he just looked at the girl and she at him. For a few seconds she lost the gift of speech. In the ward, some lamps illuminated the room. But recovering and still lying on top of him, she began stammering to ask if he was awake. She looked very excited. But the guy didn't seem angry, or maybe he just hadn't recovered yet. She immediately apologized for her behavior and said that it was an accident.
Estallar en una sonrisa. Tenía la sensación de que llevaba más de una hora esperando invitados, lo que hizo que este encuentro fuera más agradable.
Wendy said that everything will be wiped now, but he stopped her hand. He didn't say anything, instead he was silent, looking at her and remembering what had happened before. The girl did not dare to say anything, she just waited for him to say something to her.
Mustang 65 got that V8 engine with a fuel injection. Drop the clutch.
At this rather inconvenient moment, a stranger entered the ward. He was in tears and asked if the boy was okay and how he could explain all this to the hero's mother. The man was really scared for the boy's life. He continued to ask him if everything was all right with him, because he did not hear an answer.
Ninguna explicación. A la niña esto ya le parecía redundante.
The boy still felt weak and tired. All he could do was slowly shift his gaze from the brown-haired stranger to an even stranger man.
Era como si no supiera absolutamente nada en esta vida. Se refería a usar un traje que no le sentaba nada bien. El hombre, tratando de encontrar una explicación en sus ojos. Pero continuó mirando en silencio lo que sucedía a su alrededor.
When the man saw that everything was fine with Dylan, he shed even more tears, but this time from happiness. He said that it is very wonderful, that everything is in order. Although the butler was his subject, he saw how he grew and developed, so for him he was something more than just a boss. The boy still felt weak and but the young man changed the look of his face from calm to cold and asked who this man was. He seemed to be serious in his words. At that moment, the girl was surprised to see the butler and just looked at him, waiting for what would happen next.
Que le calaba el alma, sino toda la atmósfera, platos de porcelana blanca, muebles caros, padres inteligentes y un jefe inteligente.
He looked a little scared at the boy. It seemed that he was surprised, and perhaps in the depths of his heart he was offended by his words. The man introduced himself as a butler from the Alba family, Mr. Lee. Then he asked what was happening here, because it seems that he was in such a hurry that he did not ask the doctor about the patient's condition and diagnosis. But the young man changed the look of his, but the boy could not remember him, or anyone at all. Taking his hand by the twisted head, he asked what kind of butler it was and why he remembered absolutely nothing. The guy started to get nervous and look tense. He seemed scared.
Que llevaban mucho tiempo esperando este encuentro. La madre del héroe dijo que su nombre era Cha Wyon. La niña agradeció la cálida bienvenida y pronunció suavemente su nombre Jien Saebum.
Holding his head with both hands, he tried to remember at least something. Drops of sweat, along with the spilled water, ran down his face. He looked angry. But the butler told Dylan not to worry and to keep calm, as he would now go and find a doctor.
En general no lo hicieron mal, al menos nuestra heroína no sospechaba nada.
Here the boy finally looked at the girl. Since he did not remember anything, it was quite reasonable for him to ask who she was. And then Wendy understood the doctor's words and the fact that he really has amnesia. The girl was still sitting on the boy's bed.
Tiempo esperando este encuentro. La madre de
can break no.
She began to think about what to say to her. She can't answer that she is a girl who was reborn and should always be by his side and save him, because otherwise she will die. The heroine understood that she had to be close to him, otherwise she would die.
Saber que después de tanto correr, sería posible comer delicioso en tan agradable compañía. No importa que todavía no esté claro qué está pasando.
She took his cheeks in her hands. His face looked relaxed but surprised at the same time. It seemed that he did not expect such a reaction from her. She began to speak with a slight stutter.
De la vista, Jimbok parece sentirse muy cómodo. No le permitió hacerlo con la segunda. Ella insistió en que fue la chica la que contestó. La misma, asustada, guardó silencio con la esperanza de que el jefe le dijera la respuesta correcta. Fue una escena asombrosa, una chica silenciosa y un héroe suspirando explicando que no tenía sentido hablar de eso en absoluto. Al fin y al cabo trabajan juntos, es lógico que se conocieran en el trabajo. ¿Y por qué recordar algún detalle específico, día, lugar? Esta es información innecesaria para cualquiera. En estos momentos todo el mundo tiene hambre, así que sería mejor pensar en la comida.
The girl touched the boy's face with her hands and smiled. She needed to believably pretend to be a girl if she wanted to be around a boy. Dylan Alba repeated if she was really his girlfriend. He looked at her in disbelief.
Descripción con gran detalle y pensó en ello. Esta pregunta era aún más desagradable y complicada. La heroína empezó a sudar. Estaba lista para caer al suelo. Este es su director, ¿qué puede decir de él?
But the guy took her hands away from her face. He began to reach for her face with his hand. The girl was visibly nervous, drops of sweat were running down her face. Wendy wondered if the boy might just happen to understand something. Her deception and pretense. She carefully watched the boy's hand, which was getting closer and closer to her face.
Su hijo no ofendiera a la niña. De lo contrario, prometió solucionarlo y castigar al sinvergüenza.
But the excitement was useless. Dylan simply touched and slightly pulled the girl's cheek. Then he asked if he understood everything correctly, what happened here, and if she really pulled him out of the car. Although the hero had doubts in his mind, whether he really likes girls like her.
¿Dar todo esto? Si esta chica está sentada aquí con ellos, obviamente no es la primera que conoce.
Wendy happily asked if he really thought so, and clapping her hands together happily, she said that she was very happy that her little man remembered her. The girl's eyes filled with joy and burned with happiness. Her smile seemed very natural. But the excitement was useless. But the boy looked at her strangely and asked if she had called him a man before. It seemed suspicious to him. Wendy anxiously confirmed that everything was correct. She came up with the name by accident, but for now she had to follow it in her words.
Después de todo, la mesa lleva mucho tiempo puesta y la comida se está enfriando. Primero debe comer y luego con el estómago lleno para llevar a cabo este tipo de conversaciones.
The boy thought about her words. He folded his fingers on his chin, and after a few seconds said that he did not remember them getting married at all. Even if it were true, he still wouldn't remember anything. The girl was a little tense at first that he was trying to remember everything, but that was normal.
¿Es la persona adecuada para una relación seria? Pero eso no hizo nada para disipar los temores del director.
The girl decided that the best way to tell him would be to tell him everything in his ear. She slowly moved closer and whispered that they were not married yet. They were dating in secret and his friends and family didn't know her.
Después de todo, la mesa lleva mucho tiempo puesta y la comida se está enfriando. Para llevar a cabo este tipo de conversaciones.
The boy thought about it. It seemed quite plausible to him. She moved away from him a little, but he leaned over and asked if everything was really like that. His confident eyes looked into his. They were both sure that it was not so. But no one dared to say this.
Hubo un giro completamente inesperado en la conversación de nuestros héroes.
Dylan moved even closer. It looked like the hero was going to kiss her. She began to worry. The girl could not understand what the hero wanted from her, and whether he finally believed her or not.
Niña agregó que siempre envidiaba un poco a sus amigos cuando tenían la oportunidad de quejarse de algo con sus padres.
But she decided not to wait, and pushed the boy on the bed and said that since he had just woken up, he needed a good rest. She turned away from him. Wendy pretended that they were a couple, but clearly did not expect that he would want to kiss her so quickly, without even remembering her.
Papel sonrió.
It seemed that the boy did not expect this. He felt strange and just looked at her. Then the girl got up, and Dylan only had to agree. Although he didn't have a particular desire to do this either, because he doesn't even remember her, and doesn't feel anything for her.
Más afuera el clima era maravilloso y el aire fresco.
But in the next minute, the door to the ward opened and a girl and a man entered. She called out to the boy and said that she was here. Wendy turned to see who it was, because no one was expecting other guests to see the boy, at least not yet. Just woken up, he needed a good rest. The heroine apologized and asked her who she was. Although she knew a lot about the boy, she didn't seem to recognize them. All she could do was just look at them and think about what was happening here and who these two were. And the most important thing was whether they would break her plan.
Ya había empezado a imaginar platillos volando hacia su hijo, gritos y exigencias de explicaciones.
It was a man in a suit and a girl with a bouquet in her hands. She did not look very friendly, but immediately sternly said that she was the boy's girlfriend, and asked what she was doing here. It was Stephanie Holt, and her father Freddie Holt.
De que toda la historia finalmente hubiera terminado y ahora pudiera irse a sus propios asuntos. ¿Pero realmente esta historia ha terminado?
Looking at them again, she realized who they were. The girl began to worry in her mind, whether they would now provide her with shelves and display from here. She didn't know what to do, all she could do was wait for what would happen next. It was all she could do.
Muy convincentes. Pero en ese momento, la heroína claramente pensó en esta recompensa en último lugar.
But the guy answered for the girl, saying that Stephanie said that she is his girlfriend, but he already has one. Hearing this, the girl's heart was filled with anger, and she asked him who this first girlfriend of his was and where she was.
Entender qué había sucedido en la vida de su director para que tuviera que llevar las cosas a un nivel tan absurdo. Y la niña, como víctima de esta situación, quiso escuchar una explicación de inmediato.
He gently touched and took Wendy's hand in his. The guy carefully sat the girl next to him, as if not wanting to hurt her. Of course she was surprised. The heroine thought that after this he would doubt her words.
De la joven había terminado. Al comenzar su historia con su conversación en el vestíbulo del hotel, recordó que el director había roto su promesa.
Then he introduced the girl. The girl's eyes began to run around the room at such words. She clearly did not expect him to say such a thing after confiding in her. But Wendy decided to use such a chance. The girl could not miss him.
Y esto se sumó a su determinación y, lo más importante, a su coraje.
Wendy innocently introduced herself, and said that it was indeed true that she was his girlfriend. In her mind, she understood that she wanted the same thing as she, so it was impossible to allow everything to go as it should. She asked Stephanie why and impersonates her.
Pero dijo que la dama que salió corriendo del armario era su prometida original.
But the girl's words pissed her off. Stephanie said that she is his girlfriend, and she is just taking advantage of the fact that he has lost his memory, because she wants to get into the arms of the Alba family. She continued to speak so that he would not listen to her. Of course the girl was right, but no one could know about it, including herself.
Habló de lo nerviosa que estaba en la mesa de allí. Y que lo último que pensó fue que los padres del director estarían en la mesa del restaurante de al lado.
Wendy sighed heavily, and told the boy that she now understood why this woman was impersonating her. But Stephanie interrupted the conversation, and wanted to pretend that she was just slandering her and repeating her words, but asked if she had proof. The girl seemed a little confused at these words.
Para calmar un poco la situación y demostrarle a la niña que comprende sus sentimientos.
The heroine made a gloomy face and turned to the boy. The boy slowly stroked her hand, and remarked that he didn't think she would be able to see the whole situation clearly and cleanly, even through Stephanie's lies. The guy turned to Stephanie and let her know that he did not believe her, saying that he had just been diagnosed, and she should have quickly read the newspaper. Everything would be fine for the heroine as long as he refused to believe Stephanie.
Ninguna relación romántica con este hombre entonces, porque romper una comedia, e incluso con adultos que esperan con ansias que su hijo tenga su propia familia?
And then, changing her angry face to a sweet, attractive smile, Stephanie confessed and said that she really chased the boy a little. The girl's father confirmed this, but added that it is only because everyone thinks that Dylan and Stephanie are a good couple.
Todavía mostrándole al director que estaba resentida con él por este descarado engaño.
Hearing this, Wendy thought that this was not for long, and only because she wanted to save her life, but she had no bad intentions. The girl planned to tell him everything but a little later. She had to do it before Dylan regained his memory and memories.
Que ya había contemplado de camino al restaurante.
But while the hero stood his ground, closing his charming, captivating eyes, he simply replied that she would pretend to be his girlfriend without a second thought, and act out scenes. He didn't trust her at all, even though Stephanie was more like a pilot's girlfriend than an heir to the Adobe family.
Sufrido y sufrido mucho. Cualquier trabajo debe ser remunerado. Y este aún más.
He asked her again if this girl did it because the boy had amnesia. Dylan seemed determined in his words and actions, nothing could change his mind. In fact, Dylan and Wendy's story has so many lies and problems, but whether they can come out of it to trust is up to them.
Cuidaba al empleado que se marchaba, también le pidió que tuviera más cuidado en el camino de regreso para no quedarse atrapado en alguna nueva historia. Por supuesto que fue una broma.
The girl's father tried to explain to the boy that it was just a misunderstanding, because she heard that he had an accident, and she wanted to look after him, but she was afraid that she did not have the appropriate status. At the time, Wendy thought that this excuse just sucks.
No se preocuparía por eso y la extrañaría. ¿Es coqueteo o algo más?
But Dylan decided to get rid of them as soon as possible. He told them, in a stern tone, that his girlfriend did not want to see them again, and that they should get out of here as soon as possible. He looked very handsome and determined. The man apologized several times to the hero, and said that they were already leaving. Of course they had to if they didn't want trouble. But the heroine felt guilty, because she understood that she had deceived the boy who was now so desperately protecting her. He will understand everything one day.
Después de todo, no está en sus reglas almorzar con una chica y luego desaparecer.
The man and the girl got together and left. The last thing on the girl's face was anger. Dylan snapped Wendy out of her thoughts by placing a hand on her face and asking what she was thinking so hard about. On the other hand, it was very nice. It seemed as if they really were a couple.
Y el resto cuando salieron. Ambos querían silencio.
He smoothed her eyebrows, but said they were very wrinkled and her face looked nervous. The girl couldn't stand it anymore. She herself did not like being told the truth, but she had to tell it to save her life.
Veces y no pudo responder nada. Los coches, todo esto es terriblemente molesto y lleva mucho tiempo. Por eso, la niña estaba muy agradecida a su jefe por tanta ayuda.
But she could not remain silent, therefore, slowly touching the hand that touched her head, she wanted to tell him at least something. The girl slowly raised her brown eyes, looking into his transparent blue ones. He really captivated with just one look.
Nuevamente se dirigió a ella por su nombre. Y por enésima vez ese día, no se lo esperaba en absoluto.
Gathering more courage, Wendy told him, assuring him that she wasn't with him because she wanted him out of harm's way, or his family's money and their company or anything. She seemed to want to continue saying something but did not dare to say. Although she looked into the boy's eyes, her gaze was distracted.
Una gran empresa, pudiera afrontarlo solo.
But he wanted to hear, so he asked what she wanted to say next. His look gave her courage. Although she was not telling the truth, it was also for his good. The girl had to protect him, so she was a little worried.
Sus pensamientos ya llevaban mucho tiempo en casa, por lo que respondió algo que le permitiría partir rápidamente hacia su acogedor nido.
Wendy said that in that case he should trust her. And now her heart froze. It seemed that these few seconds of silence were an eternity for her, The heroine knew perfectly well that now her life would depend on his words. But she had already done everything she could, so all that remained was to wait.
¿Qué había pasado hoy? Tomó sus zapatos en sus manos e involuntariamente miró su mano izquierda.
But the guy just put his hand on the girl's head with a smile. He said that although he has forgotten everything, he remembers how she desperately saved him from the car. Dylan smiled sweetly at her.
Quería conocer. Al respecto. Ya no había fuerzas para resistirlo. La niña decidió que la solución más fácil sería simplemente devolverle este anillo al director. Pero ya mañana.
He put their hands together and intertwined their fingers. The guy said he believed her. It was really a relief for her, because she didn't fully understand whether she could get him to believe her, or whether he was playing a scene like she was.
Medio. La cocina era grande y espaciosa. Mientras los hombres comían, la madre miraba con admiración a su hijo, recordando el almuerzo con su futura esposa.
The girl walked along the corridor and complained. After all, she was already so close to Dylan Alba, but here he kicked her out. The woman was angry. The man supported her, but said that the story of this girl is not simple, and although she is young, it is not as simple as it seems at first glance.
Pues de eso. Mientras el crujido del arroz recién cocido resuena a su alrededor.
But the woman said it was a good thing she didn't catch her or she would have lost her. There was anger in Stephanie's eyes. There were hints of destruction in the atmosphere.
Admite que parecías muy dulce cuando hablabas de tu infancia. La madre del héroe dice que la niña le causó muy buena impresión. De sus palabras se desprende que está muy feliz por su hijo y su elección.
Stephanie moved on and dropped the bouquet on the floor. Two girls had the same idea, but completely different thoughts. While one was thinking about how to collect money and fortune, the other was thinking about how to survive and save the boy.
En su vida. De mucho tiempo la actividad de su esposa. Como hombre de negocios, el padre solo pregunta cuándo tendrá lugar la boda.
They were really very different. Too strong. But the best option was Wendy. Although she was not honest to the end, the heroine did not wish the boy harm. Maybe it was fate that brought them together. The guy gently touched the girl's head to give her support.
Y en general, poder aprovechar su oportunidad a tiempo es en realidad una habilidad muy útil, no solo en los negocios, sino también en la vida cotidiana.
The weather outside the window was sunny, despite the fact that it had been raining for several days. The birds sang beautifully outside the window, flying one after the other. Under the influence of the wind, leaves rustled on the crowns of tall trees.
Permanecer en su compañía durante mucho tiempo. Y para no pelear por completo, es mejor ir a tu habitación.
The wind was blowing the curtain and the sun was shining on Dylan and Wendy's faces. They both slept peacefully. Wendy slept next to the hero, not thinking about anything. The boy was also sleeping and looking very attractive while the wind blew his hair.
Y no puede encontrar las palabras adecuadas.
The girl gradually woke up. She seemed to look tired and worn out after all these events. The sun shone beautifully on her hair and eyes, forcing them to open. Wendy slowly got up.
Despertó con dificultad, por lo que las primeras horas del día transcurrieron como en la niebla. Así fue esta vez. Pasó por la zona de seguridad con su tarjeta de trabajo y se quedó esperando el ascensor.
She received a text message on her phone telling her to leave because this stranger had obtained a lawyer's business card and a bill for her. It seemed very important, something she was waiting for and something that could help her.
Realmente feliz. También pensó que estaba cansada de este estúpido trabajo y que sería bueno hacer otra cosa.
After reading the SMS, the girl's face began to look quite determined and confident. She turned off the phone, and thinking that it was time to get together, went to look for things. After all, right now, she needed to look perfect.
Ascendente. De repente su mirada se deslizó involuntariamente por sus manos y volvió a ver aquel anillo desafortunado. El mismo que inició la extraña historia de ayer. Llegó a la conclusión de que todos sus problemas comenzaban con este anillo.
The heroine dressed stylishly and quite classically. Choosing classic pants, a black top and a white blouse on top of it. She confidently held a folder with documents in her hands. In her mind, she thought that now those who did not want to see her would be forced to meet her again.
Tenía la sensación de que el anillo no quería salirse intencionadamente. como si se burlara de la niña e incluso disfrutara de su impotencia. Pero por supuesto, ese no fue el caso en absoluto.
Wendy resolutely headed for the house, because today these people had to return everything they owed to the girl and her family. She was determined to deal with them. Nothing could change her mind. Her gait was quick and sure, the wind blowing her hair as she went.
Se quedó sin comprender y miró en silencio las puertas del ascensor, pero no se abrieron. Finalmente sintió que alguien estaba parado a su lado.
Having entered, she looked and saw that a man and a woman were sitting on a sofa. And the little boy played the piano. It was spacious and clean, because cleanliness was maintained by many servants. She looked around at everyone present, but noticed that not everyone was here.
El centro de negocios y el director surgió de la nada y colgó su silueta sobre ella como nubes sobre la ciudad.
While she was standing, a maid passing by noticed her. Approaching, she told the girl that once the missus is here, she will go and tell the owner. The maids who served here had to wear the same uniform and hairstyle, namely a bun, so that the hair did not fall into the food or fall somewhere.
Terminó de forma bastante inesperada. No, ya no vale la pena correr el riesgo y la chica no está preparada para volver a experimentar esos sentimientos.
But Wendy sweetly said that it is not necessary, and let Ms. Wang will finish first. It was true, because if she was already here, there was no need to rush anywhere. No one will escape from her. And with the girl's mood it was almost impossible.
Ingresó. Vino para retirarse y comenzó a moverse hacia la puerta, sonó una suave voz masculina. El jefe volvió a llamarla por su nombre.
9 years ago there was a conversation between a doctor and a man, in which the doctor told Mr. Wien that his 2 sons have some psychological problems, and in his case it is genetic. This caused many problems in the family.
En un año. El director pareció darle a la chica unos segundos para pensar. Y luego continuó. Le preguntó si tenía a alguien ahora. ¿Está saliendo con alguien? ¿Su corazón está libre? No es la pregunta más común que puedes escuchar de tu jefe en una mañana de lunes a viernes.
The man was so angry that when he came to his wife, he threw papers about his son's illnesses at her. He angrily explained to his wife that there was no disease in his family, so it had to happen because of her. The girl was upset and cried bitterly. These were also her sons, but in order to humiliate her like that, it was necessary not to love her.
Continuar con su mentira.
Tears streamed down the woman's face. She looked very upset. It was Wendy's mother, and her name was Sherry. She sat on the floor without looking up at her husband. Sherry looked very tired, as if such scandals happened not for the first time and not for the last time.
Insiste en que esto es pura curiosidad, nada más.
Their children heard it all. They were very scared and small. 2 boys sat on either side of Wendy. They seemed to be shaking with fear. The last words were their father, after which he kicked them out, saying that the Wien family cannot lose its reputation, so Sherry needs to get out of here and take these scoundrels.
En la chica.
The sign was glowing bright pink. But in addition, many small bulbs lit up around her. It looked attractive, and I immediately wanted to go to the bar. The accompanying music made the atmosphere free and relaxing.
Exactamente hasta que se dio cuenta de cómo ella podía ayudarlo a resolver sus propios problemas. Y ahora este mismo hombre le pregunta si tiene a alguien.
Earlier, the girl's life was like a cage. But she never spoke and did not want to return what was taken from her by someone who left their family. It was because of him that Wendy could not go to college and was forced to sing in a bar.
Entonces no es necesario que pongas todas tus cartas sobre la mesa. Ella no debería parecer una presa fácil. Y ayer quedó claro que incluso un hombre tan respetable podría aprovechar la situación y idear alguna nueva estafa. ¿Por qué lo necesita?
She remembered these moments of her life with anger. Her father did wrong not only to his children but also to his wife. His daughter could not forgive him for such a thing. Their whole family was poor because of him. He did not remember for them. But she remembered everything.
Al menos suenan convincentes.
So she was determined. Holding the documents tightly in her hands, memories flooded her. She had a painful childhood, although it could not be called childhood, because she had to grow up quickly and take control of herself.
¿Va a verlo mañana?
The boy had red hair and was dressed in classical clothing. He enjoyed the music he played and was completely focused on it. It seemed that there were only piano keys in his eyes and nothing else.
Turbiamiento y pérdida del conocimiento. No sé si su mentira funcionó. Aún así intenta entender por qué el jefe hizo esta pregunta. ¿Qué le importa a él su vida personal? Después de todo, no podía enamorarse de ella.
Aurelius continued to play without paying attention to the guest. He moved his fingers quickly and smoothly over the keys. The music he played was really great. But whether he himself was a good person is a mystery. If the music is not played by a good and pure person, it is charged.
Para el desarrollo de la empresa. Las puertas del ascensor se cierran y su silueta desaparece tras ellas. La niña se queda sola con sus pensamientos y experiencias.
The man sitting next to the woman praised his son, and said that he plays very well. He seemed happy to have such a talented son. He went on to say that only Marco and Timmy are stains on his life and reputation. His words made the girl's heart sink.
Importante para él, ¿por qué no empezó a hacer preguntas más aclaratorias? Todo esto no cabía en su cabeza.
Coming closer, the girl clapped her hands and said that Chopin's Polonaise in G minor is only a little better than the one that Timmy played already at 4. Of course, the boy was talented, but there was no need to humiliate others in order to praise him.
Que ella resultó herida. Dando informes. Ese día hubo mucho trabajo, pero los pensamientos de la niña constantemente iban a un lado. Parecía que había cosas más importantes en la vida que estos aburridos informes.
After these words, namely, Wallace Ween, the girl's father, and Sybil Ween, the stepmother, looked at her with admiration. It seemed that they hated her as much as she hated them. Only Wendy didn't do anything bad to them. But the father did not see his gap in dealing with the past family.
Cuando no puedes correr a ningún lado, pero disfrutas tranquilamente del frescor de la tarde. La luna no era visible en el cielo, lo que sorprendió a nuestra heroína.
The girl standing next to the boy was Lucy Joe's half-sister. She looked just like her mother. She seemed quite arrogant. She had red hair and was wearing a simple dress.
Consumaron su matrimonio. Un colega notó un anillo en el dedo anular de la niña. Kim Su-chong quería saber de dónde venía este anillo si la chica no está saliendo con nadie.
But after hearing such words, the little boy Aurelius did not seem to be pleased with them. He further expressed his reluctance to be equal to someone who cannot even speak. This boy was also her brother through the lines of the father. He was very defiant and rowdy.
De la experiencia de ayer, en tales situaciones es mucho más importante ganar un poco de tiempo. Y allí, quizás el interlocutor le dirá cómo salir de una situación difícil.
But the boy expressed himself too harshly. The girl came up to him and told him firmly that if she had the chance, she would rather be a genius with mental problems than an ordinary one like him. With these words, Wendy greatly let down and humiliated him.
Realmente no es barato. Luego se suma otra chica de un lugar de trabajo cercano. Sugiere que Saebum tiene un admirador secreto.
She came even closer to him, smiled and looking at him with her brown eyes said that after everything, health problems can be solved, but being ordinary is forever. The boy's parents, hearing this and seeing his reaction, were quite angry.
Y dejar lugar a conjeturas. Pero cada vez hay más chicas en su lugar de trabajo. En algún momento el trabajo en la oficina se detiene. Sae se convierte en el tema central de Boom y su novio.
The boy's mother came up to him and hugged him. She glared at Wendy and asked how she could be so open with a little boy who is still young and naive. The boy clung tighter to his mother. It seemed that he understood what he said and how he humiliated his brother, but he did not want to admit it.
Al mismo tiempo están felices por su novia y nadie ha cancelado tampoco la curiosidad femenina. Si una novia tiene novio, entonces debe saber quién es, dónde trabaja y qué hace. Esto es exactamente lo que intentaron hacer los colegas de nuestra heroína.
But Wendy frankly answered the woman, saying that children learn everything from adults, and therefore it looks as if the stepmother only does what speaks of mental problems. The woman got really angry. No one had dared to humiliate her and her son like that before. But she was right, this stepmother was not as simple as she seemed.
Tarde.
But this behavior of the man's daughter also angered him. He hit the table, and said that she was simply nobody and had no education, and ordered her to go away. But not today, Today she was not to leave this city without revenge. The girl said that today she came to completely break up with him.
La chica supone que Saebum le propuso matrimonio, pero es demasiado tímida para hablar de ello.
But the man angrily and without understanding said that he had said goodbye a long time ago, and had broken all ties with her, and that she could want. It seemed that he did not want to mention his duties and considered them simply nobody. All this time he already had another family that he cared about.
Es muy parecido al real. Pero después de todo, ella es una oficinista común y corriente, necesita trabajar durante un año entero para poder comprar un diamante así.
But the girl stood her ground and said that once Mr. Ween forgot before she will remind him. Wendy was also angry, so she was not going to hide anything, but wanted to remember everything in detail to her father. She looked like a very own girl.
Exterior de su mano paralela a su cabeza, gira y muestra el anillo a todos.
She started taking documents out of the folder. Wendy told him that 9 years ago he kicked out her mother and his 3 children. And for 9 years, he completely ignored his father's responsibilities and forgot about them. The man did not provide them with any material support, let alone the fact that he did not want to see them. Taking out the documents, she said that she had prepared everything for their meeting, and calculated everything that he owed them. Namely, the total amount was 2 million won, which Mr. Ween owed them, and was supposed to pay for those 9 years, which he didn't.
La chica se traslada a su lugar de trabajo para terminar el trabajo y tomarse un merecido descanso.
The girl's stepmother was also angry. Of course, she could not allow him to pay such an amount to some girl. She said that the heroine is very self-confident, and explained that her father's money does not grow on trees.
Consigo misma y con sus pensamientos. Intenta descubrir qué está pasando en su vida. Ella piensa que si esto continúa, poco a poco se irá volviendo loca. Habría que hacer algo.
But the girl explained to the woman that her ex-husband did not pay what he owed because he was poor. But they are different, and their situations are different. Her father was rich, and such an amount should not have been difficult to raise. The boy hugging his mother looked at the girl angrily.
Convencer a Saebum de continuar desempeñando el papel de su novia. Y hoy hubo una negativa, ¿dónde puede encontrar una actriz tan buena? ¿Es real en absoluto?
Wendy continued, but said that even if she took her father's money, she wouldn't be able to do anything about it. But with a smile she added that she should remember her place before opening her mouth. But she treated her father's new wife in such a way that he could not stand it.
Morales tienes que resolver esta semana, pero los asuntos personales siempre son más importantes, sobre todo porque estamos hablando de padres.
He immediately shouted that the girl was unbearable and asked if it was her mother who taught her to be rude to elders. But the girl adored her mother very much. She was the only one who took care of her since she was a child. When she was little, her father never paid attention to her.
Matrimonio de conveniencia, colgar fideos en las orejas de su padre y su madre, jugar frente a ellos en una familia feliz. Sin embargo, esto es exactamente lo que estaba haciendo ayer en el restaurante.
In contrast, the girl calmly gesticulated and replied that her mother is gentle and has a good character, but she herself grew up a little differently. After all, she was only 19, she has the right to say and do what she wants. And he did not give her a chance for a good education.
Refleja la luz de la luna y todavía está intentando encontrar una solución a su problema. Pero no le resulta fácil.
Then she sweetly asked her stepmother with a smile that this was not what she meant. She smiled sweetly, but it was clear that no one here was happy for her. Although she herself would never have crossed the threshold of this house if she had not come for money. It was really worth it. After all, it was only the beginning.
Temprana. Siempre había mucho trabajo y muchas veces se quedaba hasta tarde.
But Mr. Ween, pointing a finger at her, and saying that she always swears with him when he only says a word, asked why she calls him father only when she needs money. But it seemed obvious, because he had done nothing as a father to them. He then continued to read the notes, and say that she did not understand the implications.
De suerte, podrás conocer a algún hombre guapo.
Wendy sharply, with a note of dinner in her voice, said that he does not understand that the first one left them. She was right, he shouldn't have done that. She said with a defiant tone that she wanted to tell about her fate, and whether he would give her a chance to do it. Mr. Ween was greedy by nature, she could never understand why her mother married one.
información personal y por eso un colega enfatiza su privacidad.
But he, hitting the table and spreading all the bills on the floor, told her not to think about such a thing, because he would not receive a penny from him. It seemed they were both set. But one of them had to give in, because it could not continue like this. The heroine expected that he, as always, would choose not to give them anything, and simply drive her out of here. Then memories came to the girl. This moment was déjà vu. It was a memory of the last days she saw her father in her life, because after that, he kicked them out. It was a painful memory for Wendy. That day, her mother cried bitterly, and the so-called father did what only aggravated the situation.
El momento más hermoso para caminar.
But the girl took out the card, held it up, and confidently said with a smile on her face that if he has any more questions, he should contact her lawyer, because she is not against filing this case with the court. It was as if a burning fire was burning in her eyes. She was finally able to finish what she came here for.
Deberían ser así también. Está de vuelta con el mismo smoking gris. Y nuevamente quiere decirle algo.
She deftly placed the card on the piano, deliberately touching several keys. This behavior greatly infuriated everyone here. She finally looked at everyone who was present here. They seemed like a good family, but every family has its pitfalls and this one is no exception. Also, there was a lot of hypocrisy and pretense.
Y ahora el director está nuevamente frente a ella, preparándose para decir algo importante.
Turning, she left, straightening her hair. Everyone who was here did not expect such a turn of history. No one thought that the girl would even dare to sue her father. In the beginning, this family thought that they would let her go, that she would be disappointed and would no longer be bothered by them or want anything from them. But they themselves were to blame for her behavior.
El director comienza diciendo que no esperaba tanta valentía por parte de la chica. Sin embargo, ayer habló de esto más de una vez.
The girl left the house. She was disappointed even more in her father, but at the same time she was happy that she could finally tell him everything. To say all that I wanted during these 9 years. Wendy hated him, but even more because he always insulted her mother and brothers.
En el fondo, por supuesto, hubiera querido seguir desempeñando este papel. No fue el peor papel, debo decir.
They were innocent children after all. Although they had health problems, they, like others, deserved a good attitude and life. Suddenly, the heroine stopped, because she saw a playground with a swing. It was so painful for her to see it again.
Espumoso. Ella no sale con nadie. Simplemente tenía mucho miedo de que el joven volviera a querer aprovechar la situación y engañar a la niña. Como sucedió el día anterior.
She pressed her hand to her heart, remembering it painfully. But it was probably their only place where they were happy, really happy. Wendy remembered swinging her younger brothers on the swing. They were all genuinely smiling because they were having fun. The boys also cherished these moments.
Lo dice con calma y directamente, mirando a los ojos de su subordinado.
The heroine remembered how they laughed heartily and ran around the swing. Maybe it was the last time they were so happy and children. After all, after that, she had to grow up quickly in order to provide for the boys and help her mother. But she knew that she wanted the best for all of them.
Petición de la persona antes de rechazarla, o si está acostumbrada a hacerlo con antelación.
No one forced her to go to work or look for it. But the girl herself perfectly understood the situation of her family, and the fact that they do not have enough money even for living. But suddenly someone ran after her from the house and called out to her.
Le han caído demasiadas cosas. No todos los hombres pueden soportar esto, y nuestra heroína ha estado trabajando casi 7 días a la semana en los últimos meses, ha llegado al límite. De repente el gerente pregunta por el salario de la chica. Esta pregunta suena inesperada. El director explica por qué necesita esta información. Le gustaría agradecer a su empleada por la ayuda que le brindó. Pero, ¿el importe de esta gratificación es realmente igual al salario anual de un oficinista? A nuestra heroína le resulta difícil de creer. El director dice que la niña recibirá regularmente pagos por las horas extraordinarias. Y prima. Este contrato entrará en vigor después de que ella acepte estos términos. Después de lo dicho, el director mira inquisitivamente a los ojos de nuestra heroína. Intenta comprender todo lo que dice el líder. ¿Qué clase de horas extras son estas? Esa cena no fue la única parte de su trato. El director poco a poco comienza a presionar a su interlocutor. Dice que será mucho dinero. La mojigata Saebum nunca soñó con una buena vida. Y ahora está literalmente parada en la puerta de su casa. Hoteles, restaurantes, coches, cosas caras, todo esto puede convertirse en ella. ¿Pero a qué precio? Eso es en lo que la niña empieza a pensar. Los pensamientos sobre mucho dinero llevan a nuestra heroína a algún lugar de otro mundo. Por un momento pierde el contacto con la realidad. Se imagina yendo al banco a sacar una tarjeta con una enorme cantidad de dinero en su cuenta. Una tarjeta que se puede utilizar para pagar cualquier compra. A medida que llegue la época dorada, será posible no negarte nada. Pero ella se aleja de estos dulces pensamientos. La niña recuerda a la madre contenta de nuestro héroe. Vio lo feliz que se sintió al ver a su hijo al lado de su futura novia. Pero la madre no sabe que en realidad no es una novia. Es malo mentirles a tus padres. Obviamente el director planea hacer esto durante mucho tiempo. Y el pobre Saebum tendrá que vender su alma al diablo y participar en este engaño. No, es mejor dejarlo ahora. Esto no sucederá. El hombre sonríe en respuesta y dice que la niña dio su palabra de ayudar. Y no incumplas así tu palabra. Esto también es feo. Sobre todo porque se ha dado el primer paso. La heroína hizo un excelente trabajo con su papel de novia, lo más difícil ya pasó. Solo tienes que seguir de la misma manera. Aquí no hay nada complicado, pero ¿cuánto dinero puedes ganar? Con dificultad para contener su descontento, la niña dice que tal engaño ya ha traspasado todos los límites. Y ella no se apuntó a eso. Estaba segura de que todo se limitaría a un solo encuentro. Al fin y al cabo, los padres del director quieren que sea verdaderamente feliz. Quizás debería buscarse otra chica y no convencer al empleado de que haga el papel de su esposa y siga engañando a sus padres. En algún momento, la niña siente como si no hubiera una persona sentada frente a ella, sino una gran pila de dinero. Todos sus argumentos emocionales, llamados a la conciencia al final, se basan en el cinismo del director. Como si este hombre estuviera seguro de que todo en este mundo se puede comprar. Aunque por otro lado, solo quiere hacer felices a sus padres. Quizás no sea tan malo, la niña ni siquiera quiere pensar en tal propuesta. Él grita que esto es simplemente inaceptable para ella. Y no se trata de la cantidad. Está dispuesta a renunciar a cientos de millones para no engañar a estos queridos ancianos. Queriendo terminar la conversación lo antes posible, se levanta de la mesa y comienza a irse. El hombre guarda silencio un rato, pero esta situación le parece divertida. El director está completamente tranquilo. Dice que incluso le gusta que una persona no esté obsesionada con el dinero. Y respeta plenamente esa elección. Y al mismo tiempo observa que la niña no se quita en todos estos días su anillo de diamantes, que de hecho, ni siquiera le pertenece. El mismo anillo que encontró ayer por la tarde en el baño. La niña se siente ofendida por esta declaración del director. Ella dice que se quitaría ese anillo hace mucho tiempo si pudiera. Pero ella ya ha intentado todas las formas posibles de hacerlo. En el momento en que la chica habla de ello, incluso intenta mostrarle al hombre que el anillo realmente se ajusta muy bien a su dedo anular. Que es simplemente imposible sacarlo de allí. La niña está parada en la mesa frente al sofá del director. Él, cruzando los brazos sobre el pecho, continúa diciendo que la chica lo está engañando y que a ella le gusta mucho este anillo que le puso en el dedo anular. El hombre dice que el comportamiento de la chica le hace pensar que mentir es una muy buena herramienta para conseguir objetivos. Insiste en que la niña volvió a pensar en su propuesta. Nuestra heroína se excita aún más. Una vez más muestra su dedo con el anillo al director, explicándole que ya ha probado todas las formas que hay, pero el anillo no se ha movido ni un centímetro. Usó jabón, cuerda, trató de sacárselo suavemente del dedo, pero todos los esfuerzos fueron en vano. El anillo le queda como un guante y ella simplemente no sabe qué hacer con él. La niña comprende que todo esto suena muy extraño, pero sinceramente no comprende qué más se puede hacer. Entonces entra en juego nuestro jefe. Le pide a la niña que se acerque, después de lo cual toma su mano y mira fijamente primero sus dedos y solo luego el anillo. Mirando de cerca, se da cuenta de que en su mano hay exactamente el mismo anillo que el de él. Tomando a la niña de la mano, el héroe habla exactamente del mismo problema con su anillo. Él le muestra su mano izquierda, que también tiene un anillo de diamantes rojo. Y este anillo es solo una copia del que nuestra heroína ya no puede quitarse todos los días. Una coincidencia asombrosa, cuya explicación ninguno de nuestros personajes puede encontrar. El director se rasca la cabeza como si intentara encontrar alguna explicación a cómo dos anillos idénticos pueden acabar en personas diferentes y tener un efecto tan perjudicial en ellas. La niña tampoco está nada contenta con esta noticia. Ella permanece en silencio, mirando el suelo de la lujosa oficina. Afuera ya estaba oscuro, pero nuestros héroes ya han perdido por completo la noción del tiempo y ahora están pensando en algo completamente diferente. La niña rompe el silencio. En su estado de excitación, ya no acepta estar ociosa. Toda esta historia ha ido demasiado lejos, al menos deberías intentar hacer algo y no quedarte sentado. Y entonces al director se le ocurre algo. Por supuesto, no lo dice de inmediato. Solo le pide a la chica que lo siga. Nada nuevo, esto es lo que viene haciendo por segundo día consecutivo. La heroína sigue al director y salen de la oficina. Los héroes se suben a un coche negro y conducen por las calles de la ciudad nocturna. La niña todavía está tratando de descubrir qué pasa por la mente de su director. Dolorosamente abruptamente se levantó de su sofá y la llamó. Seguramente debe ser algo que valga la pena. Después de pasar por la plaza central de la ciudad, varios restaurantes baratos de comida rápida y el edificio del ayuntamiento terminaron en el parque de bomberos. La niña no vio ningún cartel en el edificio, pero hace un par de años vivía en la zona, por lo que reconoció el edificio casi de inmediato. Su rostro expresaba desconcierto sobre cómo los bomberos podrían resolver su problema. ¿Por qué vinieron a esta parte? La heroína se dirigió al director, esperando que él pudiera explicarle el motivo de una elección tan inusual. Nuestros héroes se desabrocharon los cinturones de seguridad y el director incluso apagó las luces y estaba a punto de salir del coche. Sin embargo, su conversación continuó. El director dijo que si no puedes quitarte el anillo, entonces lo lógico es simplemente comer algo. Estos chicos del departamento de bomberos definitivamente tienen la herramienta adecuada, especialmente porque todos en el área saben que se les puede contactar si tienen preguntas de este tipo. Y sin embargo a la niña todavía no le cabe la idea de que el anillo tendrá que ser tratado con tanta crueldad. El hombre abrió la puerta de la sala de espera del departamento de bomberos, dejando pasar a la señora. En ese momento el encargado del turno de noche estaba de pie con su uniforme naranja brillante, inclinado sobre la mesa. No había nadie más en el pasillo. El director inició la conversación con una disculpa, lo que distrae a los bomberos de su importante trabajo. Pero en realidad no fue así. La noche transcurrió bastante tranquila, por lo que el asistente estaba listo para escuchar a los invitados inesperados. La niña se sentó en una silla detrás y el director dio un paso hacia el escritorio de turno. Extendió su mano izquierda ligeramente hacia adelante y señaló el ring. El hombre dijo que había sufrido para quitarse este anillo, por lo que le gustaría cortárselo nuevamente. El oficial de guardia, con evidente sorpresa, comenzó a examinar el dedo del director. También debió darse cuenta de que el anillo no es el más barato. Probablemente incluso sintió pena por estropear semejante adorno. Sin embargo, no lo demostró. La heroína se sentó en silencio al margen. No creía en absoluto que algo pudiera salir de esta empresa. Nuevamente lamentó haber aceptado venir aquí. En ese momento podría estar en casa y ocuparse de sus propios asuntos. Otra chica llegó a la conclusión de que su director es una persona muy molesta, aunque intenta ayudarla y solucionar el problema. Quizás debería estarle agradecida por eso. Por eso el fuerte bombero incluso se alegró de que hoy estuvieran previstos algunos trabajos. Agarró los cortacables, los partió varias veces y aseguró a los invitados que podía resolver fácilmente su problema. El asistente dijo que de esta manera se deshicieron de más de 100 adornos de este tipo. No puede ser que les cueste romper ese anillo. El chico del departamento de bomberos le pidió a la niña que le diera la mano izquierda para inspeccionar el anillo y descubrir la mejor manera de romperlo. La heroína obedientemente extendió su mano izquierda hacia adelante. El asistente no pudo resistirse y silenciosamente hizo su trabajo. Se dio cuenta de que era un anillo de bodas. Obviamente le gustó. El chico incluso lamentó que tal belleza ahora tuviera que ser rota. La niña se limitó a objetar que no se trataba en absoluto de un anillo de bodas. La niña volvió a emocionarse. Esta frase sobre la boda y sobre el anillo de compromiso obviamente la ofendió. Ella comenzó a demostrar emocionalmente que no conocía a esta persona en absoluto y que no tenía ninguna relación con él. Le pareció que en ese momento su honor estaba en juego, por eso es importante no guardar silencio, sino explicar todo como es ahora. De repente la heroína escuchó la voz del jefe. Estaba parado detrás y notó que también escuchó lo que Jien estaba diciendo. El bombero de pelo corto miró al director y dijo que debería haber sido amable con su futura esposa incluso antes de la boda. Pero el director explicó que no todo es tan sencillo. La niña no interfirió en esta conversación. Después de todo, todos estaban aquí por negocios y ella también quería llegar al fondo del ring lo antes posible para poder quitarse la historia de la cabeza. Y así las conversaciones se calmaron. El tipo de la unidad de servicio levantó sus cortadores de alambre sobre el ring. La niña cerró los ojos, ya mentalmente despidiéndose del hermoso anillo. Pero sucedió lo inesperado. Los cortacables no pudieron atravesar el fuerte metal y volaron hacia un lado, como una piedra que se desprende de la pared. El bombero no se sorprendió especialmente. Casos similares ocurrieron en su práctica. Entonces necesitas tomar cortadores más grandes, y sin embargo durante un tiempo el bombero estuvo perdido. Después de todo, era un anillo muy fino. Y sí, hizo lo mejor que pudo. Intentó recordar dónde había dejado su cortador de metal. Y sin embargo siguió sosteniendo la mano de la niña. Desde fuera, uno de los compañeros preguntó al empleado si todo estaba en orden o si necesitaba ayuda. Una chica con cola de caballo vino de una oficina vecina. En sus manos había una carpeta oscura con papeles. Quizás ella también estaba de servicio esa noche con este tipo. El bombero se volvió hacia ella a la velocidad del rayo y pidió un cortametales eléctrico. Después de eso, el niño tranquilizó a la niña y a su director. Aseguró que solo hay que esperar un minuto más y se encontrará la solución al problema. Un colega le llevó el cortador al joven al cabo de unos minutos, lo que le hizo estar increíblemente feliz. Recientemente había comenzado a trabajar en el departamento de bomberos, por lo que quería demostrar su valía y demostrar que era capaz de resolver este tipo de problemas por sí solo. El tipo encendió el cortador en la red, el cabezal cortador giró a una velocidad increíble. Comenzó a probarse el dedo delgado de la niña. La niña y el director observaron horrorizados lo que estaba sucediendo. Parecía que este poderoso cortador podía cortar no solo el anillo, sino también su dedo. Sin embargo, el joven bombero intentó en vano remediar la situación. Varias veces acercó el cortador al anillo, pero pareció salir volando de la superficie de la joya. La perseverancia que este tipo no iba a aguantar. Sin embargo, en un momento el director expresó dudas de que la cortadora estuviera funcionando a plena capacidad. Después de todo, no es normal que el cortador no pueda cortar un anillo normal. Si algo sale mal, entonces hay un problema con la herramienta. El joven oficial de servicio negó esta opción, aseguró que había usado este cortador muchas veces y todo salió como un reloj. Después de varios intentos fallidos, el tipo dejó el cortador a un lado. Reconoció que la situación es muy inusual. Esto nunca ha sucedido en su práctica. Una joven con uniforme naranja estaba parada detrás del hombre con los brazos cruzados sobre el pecho. Obviamente ella también se preguntaba cómo un cortador tan grande no podía manejar un anillo pequeño y delgado. Es como una maldita cosa. El director se quedó en silencio y el chico intentó encontrar una posible solución al problema. Finalmente el director miró a la chica. Le pidió que se levantara. El jefe dijo que salían del departamento de bomberos. Dado que esto sucedió, él debe tomar la decisión final. Y tenemos que volver al lugar donde empezó toda esta extraña historia. La niña, como siempre, no entendió nada. La frase sobre la decisión final sonaba aterradora. Como si quisiera deshacerse de ella. Salieron del edificio de los bomberos, subieron al coche, se abrocharon el cinturón y se dirigieron hasta el otro extremo de la ciudad. Afuera ya estaba bastante oscuro. Se detuvieron frente a un edificio con hermosos balcones. El hombre quedó estupefacto. Dijo que la tienda que estaba aquí antes simplemente desapareció. Comenzó a rascarse la frente en un intento de comprender si había perdido completamente la cabeza. La niña también se sorprendió. Primero miró a su alrededor. Alrededor había edificios residenciales corrientes, ventanales del suelo al techo y un garaje para un coche. No podía entender cómo al director se le ocurrió la idea de comprar un anillo en un lugar tan extraño. Vivían en una gran ciudad, había suficientes tiendas sólidas. Y ahora dice que aquí no hay tienda. Quizás nunca estuvo allí. El hombre entró en la habitación, donde estaba seguro que había habido una joyería. A pesar de lo tarde, la tienda estaba abierta. El director se dirigió al vendedor en un intento de descubrir al menos algo. Le dijo al chico detrás del mostrador que antes había un edificio llamado Bola. Bola en la espalda Uli. Para el vendedor, todas estas palabras eran claramente desconocidas. Un joven de cabello oscuro con una camisa verde oscuro, cinturón y un delantal negro, solo abrió las manos. Nunca había oído hablar del edificio Bola. Se paró frente al director y trató de ver si de alguna manera podía ayudar a un invitado inesperado. Pero no se me ocurrió ningún buen pensamiento. El director en ese momento pensó que este tonto quería engañarlo. Con calma preguntó si había algún otro edificio donde se vendieran joyas. El hombre detrás del mostrador dijo que ha estado en este negocio durante más de 20 años y que nunca ha habido nada dentro. Allí siempre estaba vacío. El director se preguntó si podría confundir este lugar con algún otro. Empezó a recordar intensamente la noche en que fue a comprar anillos de boda. Esa noche había luna llena. La luna iluminaba la ciudad por la noche no peor que una docena de faroles. Recordó que ya había estado buscando la tienda durante bastante tiempo. No hubo señales. No había luz por ninguna parte. Estaba parado frente al edificio donde se suponía que estaría la tienda, pero la puerta principal estaba cerrada con llave. Nada decía que la tienda estuviera aquí, y más aún que todavía estuviera abierta. Sin embargo, nuestro héroe ha recorrido un largo camino para conseguir estos anillos. No podía simplemente aceptarlo e irse. Acercó la puerta hacia él y se abrió. El director parecía menos formal esa noche, con una camiseta oscura y una chaqueta gris echada a toda prisa por encima. El ambiente dentro de la tienda era lo más extraño posible. Allí no había ninguna gente y era el crepúsculo. Nuestro héroe no podía entender cómo un lugar así podía tener demanda en estos días. En algún momento incluso se arrepintió de haber recorrido un camino tan largo por tal servicio. Naturalmente no tenía confianza en que en un lugar tan extraño pudiera haber joyas dignas. De repente un joven con camisa blanca apareció detrás del mostrador con anillos de boda. Parecía surgir de la oscuridad como un fantasma. El chico de ojos azules y cabello oscuro hasta los hombros fue muy amable. Le preguntó al director qué le interesaba y cómo podía ayudarle. El cuello de la camisa del vendedor estaba ligeramente desabrochado, lo que le daba cierta apertura. El director dijo que vino a este lugar a comprar anillos para su compromiso. El chico consiguió las muestras adecuadas muy rápidamente. Mostró al invitado 3 juegos de anillos. La gente rica acudía con mayor frecuencia a esta tienda y según el director, el vendedor concluyó que podía permitirse las mejores muestras. Todos los anillos eran algo similares. Solo diferían el grosor y el color del diamante. Pero podemos decir con seguridad que cada uno lució perfecto en la mano del director. El director, tras examinar los anillos, miró las manos del vendedor. Tenía algunas extrañas manchas oscuras a lo largo de sus manos. Esto llamó la atención de nuestro héroe. Por un segundo lo fascinó e incluso olvidó por qué había venido a la tienda. Nuestro héroe empezó a pensar de dónde podrían venir esas manchas. Y es contagioso. El vendedor preguntó al director si todo estaba en orden, tras lo cual nuestro héroe se dio cuenta de que esta pregunta no debería molestarlo en absoluto. Debemos elegir los anillos y salir lo antes posible de este extraño lugar. Como resultado, el hombre eligió 2 anillos con diamantes rojos. Incluso en la oscuridad, los diamantes brillaban intensamente. Eso es lo que más le gustó al director. El vendedor dijo que era una gran elección y empezó a empaquetar los anillos. Solo Dios sabe cómo lo hizo en la absoluta oscuridad de la tienda. Nuestro héroe quedó sorprendido por las palabras del vendedor. Como si supiera personalmente quién hizo estos anillos. El vendedor añadió que si usas estos anillos durante mucho tiempo, podrás sentir su verdadero valor. Después de eso, el tipo con cicatrices en las manos hizo un lazo en una caja de anillos y le entregó la compra al director. Para concluir, el vendedor puso la caja sobre el mostrador y deseó al huésped una buena relación. Al salir, el director pensó en lo extraño que es que aquí se encuentre una tienda así. Y este extraño vendedor con manchas en las manos le desea buenas relaciones. El jefe piensa que esta es una tienda muy rara y todavía está tratando de descubrir cómo los colores de camuflaje pueden combinar con un par de anillos.